Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to today's webinar where we are looking at what really makes an accounts payable function best in class for 2012. So I extend to you a very warm welcome indeed. My name is Susie West. I'm the founder and CEO at sharedserviceslink.com, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this webinar today. So that's a little bit about me. Before we go on to the next set of slides, I would like to find out, please, a little bit about you. So if you could let me know what your P2P role is today. We've got a poll question coming up on the screen right now. Are you a leader or VP, SVP, process owner in P2P? Are you a supervisor, a manager, a head in accounts payable? Are you a controller, a CFO, or finance director? Or are you in procurement and disbursements? If you could tick the box most appropriate to your role. We like to try and get these participation percentages up to past 70%. And we do normally do that with the North American market. So we're currently at 66%. So if you haven't already responded, please do so. We will always share the results. So I will be sharing the results with you. We're up to 73% of you voting. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look. 84% of you voted. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So coming up now, you can see who else is on this webinar with you. We've got 46% saying that none of the above, which is quite interesting. 24% in accounts payable. So no real surprise there with the majority of those with the roles listed saying that you're within the AP function. So only 5% of you in procurement and disbursements. So thank you very much for that. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about sharedserviceslink.com in just a moment. I'm going to give you some statistics. And to test you on your memory, we are going to be giving away at the end of this webinar a little prize for those that remember some of the key stats. We will be quizzing you on it. The prize for those that get the answer right is the survey report findings that sharedserviceslink.com did with 46 leaders in finance shared services in Europe in March. We got some great results from that study. You can see some of the charts there, some of the key stats that came out of that study. And we will be sharing that with the people that get the following numbers correct at the end of this webinar. So, sharedserviceslink.com in numbers. Many of you will be familiar with the business community sharedserviceslink.com, which I set up in 2007. But just to share some stats with you, we have a single aim, and that is to improve the business performance of our members, of which we're very fortunate to have 7,500 members today, and obviously growing at a considerable rate. We have between 700 and 1,000 members now joining each month, so we're very fortunate with that. How do we service these 7,500 members? Well, we pump out pertinent, life-changing, certainly work-changing information to our members via a number of different means. One means that we have, one channel that we have, is our conferences, and we run 8 boutique conferences each year. Some of them are in Europe and some of them are in North America. And they're all very boutique, very interactive, and they are absolutely engineered to inspire our delegates and our members. We also run 25 webinars each year. Obviously, this is one of them. And again, they're all crafted to make sure that they inspire and ignite our members to go off and drive through the change that they need to in their organizations, so essentially they can have an easier life. And we have one amazing website. So let me show you what that website looks like. It's a website that has gone through a number of developments over the last few years, and we feel that we are confidently serving our members in a very elegant fashion. You can see some of the highlighted pieces here. We at sharedserviceslink.com have a very strong research team, and we're pushing out research pieces on a very, very regular basis. And you can see here we've got top 10 leading practices in electronic invoicing for 2012. Also ringed is articles that we have posted. And you can see here as well we've got listed, if you want to find out more about our events, you can go onto the site and find out more about that. And obviously, we urge you to become a member, and members have free access to all aspects of the website. If you're not a member, I'm afraid that just isn't the case. One recent development that we've had at sharedserviceslink.com is our solutions directory. It's something that we responded to as far as our members were concerned. They told us that what they really wanted was an overview of key technologies, and so that they could have that within a kind of a searchable format. So we have that within a part of our website where you can search for certain technologies that will help you with, for example, electronic invoicing or accounts payable automation. So make sure after this that you go onto the site and become very familiar with it as a resource. Our members do treat it as their #1 resource. The good news is that we have coming up in May our Chicago annual procure-to-pay leaders meeting, and what we're offering for you today is a 2-for-1 offer. So you will qualify for 2 delegate places for the price of 1 for all webinar attendees, so long as you confirm your attendance by the 13th of April. So make sure that you quote WB123-1, or just let us know when you exit the webinar today when there will be a question. We do have some organisations joining us on this webinar today from Europe, and of course we have the 6th Toning Up Purchase to Pay to Attain Touchless Processing taking place in June in London, and we of course would like to extend a 2-for-1 offer to them as well. Okay, you can probably imagine that when, as a very strong research arm to our organisation, we want to make sure that our conferences are absolutely on the money as far as what your current thoughts are within purchase to pay. So what did our research tell us when we went out to put the Chicago purchase to pay program, procure to pay program together? I'm going to share with you now some key findings. So what we found out was that finance and procurement absolutely need to collaborate, and the organisations that are doing particularly well in accounts payable, which is obviously the main focus of today, they treat purchase to pay as an end-to-end process. They realise that an invoice is a transaction that is actually created at birth, which is within the procurement organisation, and the accounts payable and their efficiency can only really be as good as the procurement organisation will allow it to be. So if procurement isn't on board, there is a ceiling to effectiveness that accounts payable will actually reach. And that ceiling is actually quite low if procurement isn't on board, as far as KPIs like cost per invoice or payment on time rates are concerned. So finance and procurement need to collaborate, and this was certainly something that was coming back when we were doing our research with the North American market. P2P is optimized by having a single ERP. This is certainly a trend that we're seeing globally at sharedserviceslink.com. If I'd asked the question probably about 5 years ago, how many shared services organizations operate off a single ERP, I would have been told that only really 10 or 12 organizations globally had a single ERP. Very, very different response this year, where a lot of hands go up at conferences, or a lot of people respond positively when we ask, do you run off a single ERP? And we are just seeing a strong movement from multiple ERPs to a single ERP, and certainly a standard use of that single ERP. So the recognition that P2P is optimized by having a single ERP. KPIs are relied on more than ever, and purchase to pay leaders and accounts payable heads are realizing that if something needs to be improved, absolutely needs to be measured, and these KPIs obviously need to be made available internally within the team, but also need to be shared across the business so everybody knows how they can contribute towards the KPIs. We're finding at sharedserviceslink.com that league tables are being established between accounts payable leads and their internal business customers. So the business customers can actually see where they are on these league tables. For example, are they raising purchase orders compliantly? And if so, how many purchase orders or invoices have a PO and that are being dealt with by the shared services organisation? These are the kinds of things that are being shared with league tables and having a very, very positive impact as far as shared services results are concerned. Touchless processing is achievable, but success factors do need to be followed. And we know this, I think everybody on this webinar knows that touchless processing is achievable. There are organisations out there that are at 85% touchless processing as far as accounts payable is concerned. And their shared services and accounts payable function are focusing on much more exciting things rather than just keying in data. So, and they really are becoming very valuable partners to the rest of the business. But success factors do need to be followed. Also, our research found that channeling spend improves your procurement performance. Absolutely. If you channel your spend through technology, through your P2P automation suite, then your procurement performance absolutely improves as far as negotiating more elegant contracts, negotiating better terms with your suppliers, better relations with your suppliers and your vendors as well. Introducing elements that are now coming into play, such as gamification, is a very interesting aspect that we've been spending quite a lot of time at sharedserviceslink.com looking at and examining, liaising quite a lot with SAP, who are looking a lot at gamification and how they can use gamification within their SAP P2P suites to drive the behavior of users within purchase-to-pay. So if you want to find out more about that, we can certainly have a chat about that. But this is literally a game-changing, excuse the pun, but game-changing functionality that SAP and other ERPs are pushing out there. Technology absolutely is the answer, but programs to drive them through are critical, and the programs to drive them through largely involve change management, a big communications effort, training, and making sure that the expertise that often comes from the technology provider is somehow transferred internally. So when the provider disappears, which they will do at some point, they'll let you get on with it, you don't feel like you're being left alone standing on your own. So technology absolutely is the answer, and this is such a huge shift that we're seeing, but programs to drive them through are critical, and a huge part of that program is around the change management aspect, which is so often overlooked. Supply chain financing can absolutely swing your purchase-to-pay value prop, so it can make a business case go from okay to massively compelling and really prick the interest of your senior management team. So bear those factors in mind, and obviously our research told us that these were all key elements that we needed to consider in our Chicago program, and I'm really pleased to say that we're addressing each and every one of these aspects and going into real detail behind the how piece at the Chicago conference. So do make sure that you come and join me. I will be chairing the meeting for this 2-3 days, and you'll be in excellent company. We've got the companies listed there that are going to be joining us, so do make sure that you register, taking up that offer at the end of this webinar. Right, I'm very pleased to be introducing my co-presenter today. Many of you will have heard of Vishal Patel. He's the Research Director at Ardent Partners, and he is exclusively sharing with us fresh off the press results that have just come through from a big study that they've just done. This is the first time that they have been aired, and we're very privileged to be used as a platform to be presenting these results. And also, just to let you know, that is a bit of a sneak preview, because these results haven't even been properly published. They'll be published in the coming weeks. So you're really having, ladies and gentlemen, a very special sneak preview. With all that in mind, just bear in mind your role in all of this. You do have the role which is to ask questions. So please do take up the baton on that front. Make sure you send me your questions nice and early, and I will put it to Vishal, and use this opportunity to make sure that you get the answers and the information that you seek. I know that you've come onto this webinar for a reason. Make sure that you get that answer, or rather that question, answered in the next 60 minutes. The sooner you send me the question, more likely it is to be asked. Do make sure that you stay on for the last 10 minutes where we will be doing the Q&A. So with all that in mind, I'd now like to hand over to Vishal Patel, Research Director at Ardent Partners. Over to you, please, Vishal.
Thank you very much, Susie, and hello and welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining today's session. I just wanted to start really quickly by giving you a bit of a background of myself. I'm, as Susie had said, the Research Director at Ardent Partners. My background is largely in financial operations and procurement. Prior roles have included Research Director at Aberdeen Group in the Global Supply Management practice, where my coverage areas included some of the other aspects of P2P, including contract management, sourcing, e-procurement, and a lot of the ePayables research that we did there. Here at Ardent, my focus is largely on the second P of P2P, if you will, the accounts payable automation part of the process, and really helping to benchmark and develop best practices for organizations looking to transform their P2P organizations and accounts payable organizations. Just really quickly, I wanted to just go over the agenda for today. We'll do a quick introduction of Ardent Partners and our focus and the research that we are going to be sharing today. Some of the key findings that we got from our very recent survey. What we found in terms of best-in-class organizations and what they're doing and how they're able to achieve those improved levels of efficiency and cost reduction that they have, and ending with some recommendations and the Q&A session. So just a brief introduction of Ardent Partners. We are a research and advisory firm, and our sole focus is on the source-to-settle process. So we do cover all of the processes, strategies, technologies within that area, and really look to research and develop best practices that organizations can leverage and research around the technologies and the processes that are best used in this process. Just a little bit about our framework and how we think about things. So our definition of ePayables is shown here on the screen, and is fairly simple, and it's kept at a higher level. And we think of ePayables as the solutions or services that automate all or part of the AP process. And we consider the AP process to be consist of these three major phases. So you have receive, process, and pay. And that really covers all of the processes within AP, from the receipt of an invoice, whether it's in paper format or e-invoice or EDI, all the way to the validation, matching, and approval of it, and then through to its the scheduling and the execution of the payment. Now, this solution framework is really to provide imaginary dividing lines that can assist companies in understanding their current state, so understanding what the current processes are, and then also identifying specific goals for what the process should look like, without really being overwhelmed with a lot of the details within these three phases. So now I just wanted to start off by sharing some of what we found in our research, so some of the key findings and what the focus of our research was. And just before I do that, just wanted to provide an idea of who participated in the research. And as Susie said, this is really the preliminary findings for the report, which is going to be released in a few weeks. At the moment, we have about 200 survey respondents, and largely they're from North America, about 60%, but a good chunk from Europe. We had about 30% that were C-level titles that responded to the survey. In terms of job function, it was largely accounts payable and finance. And then in terms of company size, The participants were largely from companies with over $1 billion in revenue, about 51%, but also a fairly good representation from the mid-market. And then lastly, if we look at how these participants' AP operations were organized, approximately 80% of them had either a centralized AP operation or were operating under a shared service model, so either a single global shared service or multiple global shared service centers. So just for the, one of the first questions we did ask in the survey is really to find out, where AP is in terms of their current initiatives, what are their challenges, and what we found in terms of the challenges they're facing at the moment is that they're largely the same as they've always been. So you can see from this chart here that, it's highly manual, paper-driven processes and really lengthy invoice and payment processing times. And these are challenges that we've heard about from AP for several years now. And it seems that for the most part, AP has not, or for the majority, that AP has not been able to overcome these. So they're still facing these challenges. And I think what's important to realize here is these challenges are not really going to go anywhere until changes have been implemented, unless something changes. And AP must transform its function in order to generate and show the value that lies within it. At the moment, a lot of the survey respondents and a lot of the interviews that we did for this report, a lot of the groups are responsible for manual and tedious tasks like data entry, like answering hundreds of phone calls from suppliers. And this really isn't going to change on its own. If we take, for example, the procurement function, they've generally done a good job of repositioning themselves within the enterprise. They even have a seat at the C-level with the CPO. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be a chief payables officer anytime soon, but there are some learnings that AP can take away from that. Next, I just wanted to hand it back to Susie really quickly for a quick poll that we're going to conduct.
Thank you very much, Vishal. So coming up on your screen now. Before Vishal goes into what the top business drivers are for 2012 as far as the survey results are concerned, take a look at this poll here. What are your top 3 business drivers for 2012? So is it the need to, please tick 3, need to improve process efficiency, need to improve management of cash and working capital, need to improve days paid outstanding, need to improve invoice/payment errors and discrepancies, or maybe it's something else which we haven't captured in the top 4 bullets. So if you can please tick the ones which resonate with you, your top 3. And we've only had 56% of you voting, so if you haven't already voted, please do so. I will be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results, please. We've got 68% of you responding, so thank you very much indeed for that. Coming up on your screen now, you can see the results. So 85% of responses needing to improve process efficiency. So I suppose no real surprise there. Quite interesting that only 22% of you needing to improve days paid outstanding. So obviously a lot of you are doing very well as far as your days paid outstanding is concerned. So interesting results there. Back to you, please, Vishal.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely is interesting in terms of the results, and they match quite well to what we had found. If we go and look at the top business drivers that our research was able to uncover, we'll see that the single biggest pressure is the need to improve process efficiency, according to 52%. And really only once this is dealt with can AP focus its attention on more strategic activities. Like, for example, the second business driver, which is, it's further down in terms of business pressures with only 27%, but it is the second business driver that we found, and it's the need to improve management of cash and working capital. And AP can really have an impact on this, but what it does need to do is get its house in order and function efficiently first. And if we look at the third one also, the need to improve DPO, both of these really tell me that the finance and AP professionals that responded to the survey know that they can impact this figure, and it doesn't impact working capital, but they face challenges of their own in terms of being able to get to that point where it's possible. What this slide and the last one really tell me is that the opportunity that is available within AP to improve its function and to act as more of a value-creating group within the enterprise is very well known by most, and it's not a mystery as to what AP is capable of. Streamlining processes and introducing some level of automation can have a tremendous impact. So what really is the problem, and what we find as the biggest roadblock to automation, and we looked at one level of automation here, and we asked the question of what is the biggest challenge to migrating from paper to more electronic forms of invoicing. And the biggest challenge reported by far was getting suppliers to participate in the initiative. 76% said this. Supplier participation is critical to electronic invoicing. If suppliers don't get on board with the solution, it's likely that the full value is really not going to be achieved. However, this is typically a challenge of using an e-invoicing solution, and what we've found is that best-in-class companies, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, is that those companies are taking a multi-solution approach. So it's not only e-invoicing or it's not only data capture. They're using e-invoicing where it makes sense and trying to maximize the percentage of suppliers that participate in that. But they're also putting in place capabilities that will allow them to handle suppliers that are still continuing to send paper. And one of those capabilities is a scan and capture type of solution. Another challenge is to migrating off paper is the internal change management. And 58% that reported this as a big roadblock. And this can really be a big hurdle to any new AP automation initiatives. Transforming AP is really as much about change management as it is about new technology, and the impact to the organization in various areas like business, people, processes, IT should not really be underestimated, because once the acceptance to those changes are enforced and are encouraged, that really determines the success of the project. And lastly, on this slide, what I wanted to talk about is the surprising fact that the majority really do see significant value in automating AP. It was only about 30% who thought that the ROI is unclear, and only about 20% that thought that AP automation is not a priority within the organization. So clearly there are some potential here for AP to improve, and these are the roadblocks they really need to overcome. Now just to the next slide, to the next section of the presentation is to look at some of the capabilities AP groups have now and what they're planning to gain over the next year. And this slide shows you with the blue bars what capabilities organizations currently have, and with the red what they're planning to gain over the next 12 months. And because this slide is a little noisy, I'll just make it easier for you and look at some of the prioritized area in terms of the current usage. So if we look at current state, we can see that AP groups have standardized their processes for the most part, both with invoicing and with payment processing across the enterprise. So you can see about 69% are already have AP standardized processes, and what was surprising also is that a good chunk already have the capability to conduct straight-through processing or touchless processing, as it's also called. And this is really where an invoice can be received, validated, matched, and scheduled for payment without any human intervention, and this is a key capability that will allow for AP staff to continue working on, to stop working on, the tactical and manual processes. And if we look at the what's next in terms of what's coming up for over the next 12 months, we have organizations are really focusing their efforts on cash flow optimization, and this was quite a change from what we've seen in research conducted in years past. And 48% report plans to implement cash flow optimization policies and procedures, and this is one of the strategic benefits that AP can influence, and is one of the results of having an automated process and access to real-time, accurate information as to invoices and payments. The next one there is also the ability to measure and monitor AP metrics. So 46% showed interest in this. And this plays an important role, as Susie had mentioned as well, in continuously improving AP operations. So metrics are very important to establish prior to automating your process, because that's the only way you can show the improvements being made. And one of the key areas I wanted to highlight here is the significant interest shown in linking procure-to-pay processes and systems. This is really something that organizations have shown more and more interest in over the last few years, and from my perspective and from Ardent's perspective, it's definitely the right move. Essentially, a transaction does begin in procurement and ends in AP, and all the while, both parties are interacting with the suppliers, and they're really two sides of the same transaction. And the extent to which these can be linked, and the systems and the processes can be linked, will enable organizations to more holistically manage that process. And it's important to have those linkages to ensure, for example, things like contract compliance. If AP goes through a sourcing exercise and negotiates a very successful contract with significant savings, and AP is not aware of the terms or the new pricing, there's a major disconnect, and a lot of those savings are lost. The next section here is just go through a similar exercise and talk about some of the key findings in terms of technology usage. But before I go to that, we have another poll question.
Thank you very much indeed, Vishal. So coming up on your screen now, multiple responses, please, ladies and gentlemen. What technologies do you use in procure-to-pay today? Do you use e-invoicing, automated routing and approval workflow, supplier networks and supplier portals, dynamic discounting, e-payments such as P-card or ACH? So if you could tick the boxes that are relevant to what your usage is within your accounts payable and purchase-to-pay organization today. So just to go through them very quickly again: e-invoicing, automated routing and approval workflow, supplier networks and portals, dynamic discounting functionality, or e-payments such as P-card, ACH. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results there. 74% of you responded, so thank you very much. Coming up on your screen now, you can see again, quite interesting, the adoption of e-payments such as P-card, ACH, 78% there, and routing and approval workflow, very, very popular, and e-invoicing coming in at 58%. Not so popular, which is quite interesting because we're seeing a shift to suggest otherwise, that there is a move towards dynamic discounting. Only 13% coming in at dynamic discounting technologies to help with dynamic discounting enablement. Thank you very much, and back to you, Vishal.
Thank you, Susie. And it is interesting from here. It's, again, very similar to what we found. A lot of interest in electronic payments and automated routing and approval workflow, as you can see from this chart. The layout of this chart is similar to the previous one. We have currently used technologies and those that are planned to be used over the next 12 months. And Now, just to talk about the current state again in terms of AP automation, this next chart shows where organizations are focused at the moment and where their capabilities in terms of automation are. And a key capability is, of course, the automated routing and approval workflow, and one that already many organizations have, about 43%, but also one that shows a lot of interest over the next 12 months. Automated routing and approval is one of those capabilities that really make it easier for people to review, approve invoices, pass it along throughout their organization to the right people, and ensure that action is acted upon in an appropriate time frame. And again, we'll see later it does impact those key metrics that AP is more and more AP organizations are starting to measure. It also seems that there's a significant usage of document imaging technology, so about 65% said they already use this. This is where invoices are scanned into an image. However, there's not much or as much usage of data capture tools where that scanned image of the invoice is used to extract and capture the data within it. What's very interesting is that 75% show current usage of electronic payments, and we're talking here about ACH or P-cards and other forms of electronic payments. And this is interesting because in interviews and in other comments throughout our research, we found that although companies have this capability in place, it's applied to a small percentage of suppliers. And again, here what the challenge becomes is getting suppliers to participate in the program and enabling them to accept electronic forms of payment. And more we're seeing a reduction in check usage, and it definitely is moving towards electronic payments. But the challenge again is getting suppliers to participate in the program. Now, if we talk about what's next, now this slide is very interesting, and it's regarding the technologies where respondents have shown the most interest in over the next 12 months. And you can see that almost 50% report plans to use e-invoicing over the next year. Now, e-invoicing solutions have the potential to drastically reduce processing costs and introduce a very high level of efficiency and visibility while completely removing paper from the AP process. However, as we saw before, and as with e-payments as well, the success of an e-invoicing program is highly dependent on the level of participation from suppliers. And this really brings us to another area of interest. So supplier networks, if we look at that, approximately 40% expressed an interest in supplier networks. And we at Ardent are really of the opinion that trading networks, supplier networks, B2B networks are the way business is going to be conducted more and more over the coming years. However, part of the challenge at the moment is that there are several networks and they don't necessarily interact with one another on the scale and the capability that we would like. It's sort of like if I'm using an AT&T mobile phone, I would not be able to call or accept a call from someone using a T-Mobile phone, and this really presents a challenge. And once this is solved, we're going to see a big leap in the usage of e-invoicing and supplier networks. One of the big spikes we saw in interest in this research effort was around dynamic discounting, where you can see only 6% reported currently using this type of technology. But over the next year, 26% showed interest in adopting this technology. And dynamic discounting can be a very powerful tool if you get suppliers to participate. And there are benefits for both parties. So buyers get more control and flexibility in the management of their cash, and when they're making the payments, they get a very big return on their money when making an early payment discount. And suppliers get paid early and more quickly, which is something that really every supplier is looking for. So now to the second half of our presentation is really to talk about best-in-class companies and what they've been able to achieve and how they're able to achieve that. And before getting into that discussion, I just wanted to spend a second on this piece of data here. What we found in our research is that on average of those 200 companies and that participated, 71% of invoices are being received in manual format. And this includes paper, email, PDF, fax, all considered to be manual forms of invoices, and the remainder are being received electronically, which we consider to be e-invoicing or EDI or XML, those types of electronic invoices. What we found is, if we look at this figure from the best-in-class perspective, it's reversed. So, best-in-class for the majority are receiving invoices electronically, and where they are receiving paper invoices, they have put in place the capability to take that paper invoice and automate it, extract the data, and put it into the same stream of processing as an e-invoice goes through. And if you look at the bottom there, it supports what we've shown here in this presentation and the research, and it shows whether in 2 years the receipt of paper invoices will increase, decrease, or stay the same. And as you can see, an overwhelming majority, 86%, believe that the usage of paper will decrease over the next 2 years. And with that, we have another poll question from Susie.
Thank you very much indeed, Vishal. So coming up on your screen, this is the last poll that we're doing as far as benchmarking poll questions are concerned. How much does it cost you to process an invoice today? So this is a purchase invoice. This is your average cost of invoice, please. So if you bundle in your electronic, your EDI, your paper, your PO, your non-PO. Is it less than $1? $1 to $5, $5 to $10, $10 to $20, or is it over $20 today? So only 54% of you have voted, if you could do so. And also just to remind you, we only have about 8 minutes left of Vishal's presentation before we move to Q&A. If you haven't posted through your question, we do have a lot, but if you haven't posted through your question as yet, please do so. Make sure that you do just after we shut this poll down. 64% of you have responded. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results coming up on your screen now. We've got 15% coming in at less than $1. So congratulations to you if you ticked that box. You're obviously doing a lot, very well indeed. We've got 10% bell curve there. You can see 10% coming in at over $20. So really, it's these are kind of figures that resonate a little bit with the next chart. So back to you, please, Vishal.
Great, thank you. And yes, it does bring us to our next chart, and it's really a key metric in the world of accounts payable and P2P is the cost to process an invoice. So this metric is from a research perspective, it's one that's very difficult to benchmark against because every company uses a different method to measure the cost of processing. Do you include overhead? Do you include the electricity that, the building that AP sits in and that sort of thing? So it becomes quite complex. However, what we did find is that the average cost for this sample survey respondents is $19 per invoice. And it's still fairly high, although believe it or not, this figure has come down from years past. So, if we look to 1 or 2 or even 3 years ago, the number was slightly higher. And even within this research effort, as you can see, we have over 16% that report cost of over $30 per invoice, which is clearly high. Now, if we look at the best-in-class and how they are, and what their cost of processing is you can see it's less than $2. And the way we determine best-in-class is using a couple of metrics and then looking at the top 20% in that within those metrics and applied that to the entire data that we collected. And you can see here best-in-class have invoice processing costs of less than $2, and if you think about the consequences for a second, you can take a company that processes 10,000 invoices a month. If we look at an annualized basis, their average cost of processing invoices would be over $2 million. Whereas if you look at a best-in-class company, it's around $250,000 or $240,000. So a very compelling reason to improve processes and gain that efficiency. Now, if we look at other metrics that we collected, now these show some of the metrics that we were able to collect. You can see that best-in-class companies are able to process a much higher number of invoices per FTE or per staff member, which clearly has an impact on the cost per invoice. The market average that we found for this metric was around 1,400 invoices per FTE versus over 4,000 invoices for best-in-class companies. And this is on a monthly basis. One way best-in-class companies are able to achieve this level of efficiency is by setting up systems and processes that allow for a certain percentage of invoices to be processed straight through. So really best-in-class is just left to manage exceptions to that process. Now the next metric there, invoice cycle time, is really an essential component of being able to capture early payment discounts. If you think about it, invoice cycle times, the longer the cycle time, the less likelihood you're able to have the invoice processed and approved and scheduled for payment before you lose that time frame for capturing the early payment discount. And what we see here is that best-in-class report invoice cycle times of approximately 2.5 days versus almost 10 days for the average. And lastly is a metric that not only AP groups are concerned about, but also one that is important for procurement and, of course, suppliers, is the paid on time percentage. And this is clearly beneficial to supplier relationships and something that can be leveraged during negotiations. And you can see here best-in-class significantly outperforming the market. Now, this next slide, we've talked a lot about best-in-class, and just wanted to summarize some of the common characteristics that we found. And we see that they definitely have more automation in place. And not only that, they're taking a multi-solution approach. Now, if your company is one that can achieve or thinks it can achieve 100% e-invoicing, by all means, that should be your goal. But for most companies, that's a hard goal to achieve, and there needs to be other solutions in place to take care of the paper that is still coming in. However, what we also found is it's not all about technology. So technology is an enabler and allows AP staff to better do their jobs and better service their organization and create value to the rest of the enterprise. But really the key is having the right people to accept changes, having the people that accept new ideas, new technology, and that's really the way any function can move forward. Even regarding processes, automating a wrong process doesn't really make it right. And lastly, if we look at the best-in-class costs, yes, they have lower costs, but they also have an AP operation that is able to act strategically and able to impact key financial metrics. Excuse me. Now, the next slide, if we look at, we talked about procure-to-pay a lot, and what we did find also for best-in-class companies is that they're taking a more holistic approach to procure-to-pay instead of working in silos and separating the two functions. And we think it's very important to take into consideration the longer-term goals, even if you're starting with a small AP project like automating the receipt function or introducing automated workflow and approval. You really have to think about the first P in the process and what technologies are being used there, what processes are being used there, and how to most effectively look at the entire P2P process as a whole. The last section we have today is the recommendations. And firstly, probably one of the highest impact activities is to migrate off paper as quickly as possible. And this is really so that you can automate the very labor-intensive activities such as data entry, invoice receipt, and there are solutions available that can enable you to do that in a fairly easy and quick manner, like scan and capture or OCR. The second one there is if placing your initiative in the context of a larger P2P initiative and vision. And really what I mean here is to consider the longer-term goals and vision of the initiative when in the initial planning stages. Organizations or AP organizations are likely to only have limited opportunity to present their business case, and you want to take into consideration the longer-term goal when you're going through this process, even if it's just a small part of the entire plan. Stakeholders are definitely key. You want to engage early and often. The initial returns of any AP initiative can be very largely impacted by the level of user buy-in and adoption, and engaging key stakeholders is a key strategy to getting it right the first time and getting support from the entire organization. And of course, understanding your requirements. You want to be in a position where you can clearly state your requirements, clearly state where the goal is to be, so that you're also clear in selecting your solution provider and making sure that those solution providers are meeting the requirements that you have. Number 4 is, we talked about a lot, is developing a supplier enablement strategy, and enabling as many suppliers as possible in the shortest time frame is really should be one of the top priorities for any ePayables project. And if utilizing e-invoicing or e-payments, you have to consider the communication campaign, that the target suppliers that the suppliers that you're going to target first. You really have to have a cycle that's constantly running in terms of targeting, messaging, and activating suppliers, and it should be thought of more as a sales process than anything else. And then lastly is collaboration, and the larger procure-to-pay process within your organization is something really to consider prior, during, and after selecting a solution. And really what brings it together is a partnership between AP and procurement, and this has to be long-term, and for it to be meaningful and and for it to actually impact the P2P process, organizations have to take steps to make it more formalized and introduce a level of formality to engage both groups together, such as regular interactions or status checks. That's all for the recommendations that I have and my part of the presentation. I hope those recommendations are helpful to you, and I'm going to hand it back to Susie to conduct the Q&A session.
Thank you very much indeed, Vishal. That's great. And just before we move into Q&A, I just want to wrap up on that quick question that we were posting to you earlier in the webinar. How many members does sharedserviceslink.com have? Is it 5,500, 6,500, 7,500, or 8,500? For all of you that get the answer correct, you will be sent a complimentary copy of the survey results that we did as part of the European Leaders Shared Services Summit, and we will be pushing that out to you. So please do respond there, and 65% of you have responded. So I am actually going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a quick look. 70% of you responded, and coming up on your screen now, you can see that 72% of you were absolutely spot on, and yes, we do. SharedServicesLink.com does have 7,500 members, so you'll be getting your free copy sent out to you after this webinar. So let's move directly to questions. We only have about 5 minutes, so it'll be quick fire questions to you, please, Vishal. So coming up now, we've got a lot coming through. So let's start with one question that we've got coming through as far as e-invoicing adoption and industry. Did you find that there was an industry that was particularly strong in its e-invoicing adoption?
We did look at some industries, and one that we found was oil and gas. It seems that e-invoicing adoption is much stronger there. In terms of other industries, there wasn't any significant enough adoption that's of note. That was really the only one that we found, and in our research and even years before, we found that there are specific networks that are providing e-invoicing to only the oil and gas industry, and there's a whole solution set that's really focused on that industry. So that's probably the reason.
Okay, that's good. Do you have any idea or statistics showing where accounts payable activities, i.e. cost centers, tax coding, are largely handled, or where it's more efficient for it to be handled, i.e. in country functional areas or in specialized shared services organizations?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of we didn't ask specifically in our research that question, but what we have found in terms of interviews and other comments from the survey respondents is that they are taking a mixed approach. So in certain regions, it's more effective to offshore some of the AP function or responsibilities. In others, it makes more sense to have it in-house. So it's really a mixed bag. If we look at shared service centers, they're usually, for the ones that are single global centers across the entire world, they usually have their capabilities in-house because they have a broader range to cover and really have to be on point in terms of the capabilities and information that they can provide to the entire organization.
Sure, good. I've got a question here. I think I'll take this one if I may. How much of P2P business cases are linked to early payment discounts, and once implemented, how successful are companies in realizing those savings? What we're finding amongst our membership base is that increasingly shared services organizations are seeing e-invoicing as a means to an end, and really the end goal is to take advantage of dynamic discounting. And what we're seeing with solutions out there, Taulia is a solution that springs to mind, obviously Ariba is one that springs to mind, that these are organizations that use e-invoicing as the kind of the enablement part, that the actual business case return comes through dynamic discounting. And the returns that clients are getting really are very significant in terms of millions of dollars of savings that are reaped because of the dynamic discounting piece. So it's quite interesting that I think quite a low percentage of you today are using dynamic discounting technology. I think this time next year, if we ask that question, the adoption rate will be much, much higher. Moving on to another question, is self-service supplier portals, is this something that's becoming more popular? And also, where do we receive more information on this service? As far as you're concerned, Vishal, are you seeing that the adoption of self-service supplier portals are becoming more popular?
Yeah, the answer to that is absolutely. I think self-service supplier portals are a key component of AP being able to reduce their workload and just take away a lot of the responsibilities that they have now so that they can focus more on strategic activities. And these portals really allow suppliers to answer their own questions, to submit disputes or comments through a portal that are then flowed into AP in terms of a work stream. And make the whole process quite more efficient. And a lot of the e-invoicing networks and providers offer self-service portals, but also we've seen more and more AP automation providers like the scanning capture providers or workflow providers introducing their own portals. And if you go to our, if you have an opportunity to download this research that will be out in a few weeks, there'll be information on that in there.
Okay, good. Unfortunately, we are drawing to the end of this session. Just one final question, and I think if it's okay, Vishal, I'll take this, is where is e-invoicing the toughest to introduce? So what we're finding, again, from our members and doing research with our members is that as far as e-invoicing is concerned, so long as it's legally compliant within country, then it should be a straightforward rollout as far as the supplier enablement, the supplier communications is concerned. I don't really feel that there is one country that is harder to tackle than another, so long as there is the thumbs up from the VAT authorities and the tax authorities that e-invoicing is indeed legal within that country. So I think so long as you've got and you're working with a partner on the whole that specialises in something like this, and they have a kind of local language supplier onboarding teams to help you onboard suppliers in their own language, then that obviously is going to really serve your e-invoicing goals. So thank you very much indeed. We do have a lot of questions coming through, but of course any that we haven't answered, we will look to answer them after this particular webinar, and we look forward to doing that. Just to remind you that we do have the 2-for-1 offer. It is valid only until next Friday. That's Friday, April 13th. Make sure that you quote the reference code below, and we look forward to meeting you there. And also, we've got coming up in April 2 very exciting webinars, so make sure you put those in your calendar for April. And thank you very much to Vishal for sharing us a fantastic insight of the survey results. Very exciting information there and some really helpful recommendations. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you and goodbye.